hope you're doing well. So today I thought we will go back to one of my illustrations that I haven't finished in terms of adding some color. And today we will use up, I believe these are leftovers from my ultimate palette. And I'm thinking, where is it so I can quickly show you? Is this palette right here. Now I am also selling individual tubes if you're interested on Etsy, Alyona Creates, and there will be half pan sets available in due course as well. So beginning of March, I'm hoping to have them ready for the 1st of March. Not 1st of March, for the first week of March. Okay, so what I'm going to do is a similar thing where if you watched this tutorial with the leaves, I have done a lovely kind of gold green deep and chartreuse mix and then added some blotches with a little bit more chartreuse in it, I think, to create that look of speckles that sometimes you can see in eucalyptus. This is not meant to be eucalyptus, it's just a greenery, that's it. So sometimes I do them inspired by the real plants or trees or leaves or flowers, and sometimes I do my botanical illustrations from my mind, and this particular came from my mind. So I also have this palette here with some leftovers, so I will be using both of them and just sort of mixing in the colors that I quite like the look of. I hope you can see everything. Let me just move things around slightly. It's such a key to see how people mix their colors. I think I may need some of my cobalt teal, but firstly I will go into this color. Yes, I do need a little bit of cobalt teal. So I've got a number of cobalt teals squeezed out here because I've been doing a video on comparing these colors. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'll just show you quickly. There is a comparison I've done to the 4 colors of my palette, which you can find similar colors, but I just wanted to show you how different mine are from what is available from the big brands. And here mine is the greenest, although when I rewatched the video when I was editing it, I think I might have had water of this color, and it does obviously lift it to a greener color, so it's still greener than others, but maybe not to such an extent in reality when you get it squeezed out of the tube. So for now I'm just trying to mix it to the right green that I like, and I'll probably add a little bit more gold green into here, and I think this is a good color now. Sometimes if you're not certain what would be helpful, if you for example have a like a little paper available to swatch things on, or you can do it on the paper as well, just next to your painting. So this looks good to me, so I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So typically I like to concentrate my watercolor at one point and then just lighten it. Also a good thing to do is to have a rag. I'm just going to get my rag out. Okay, so now hopefully you can see what I'm going to do. So I washed my brush and I'm going to control the water by using a rag. I don't want my brush to be completely dry, but I do want it to have minimal water, so we don't add a blob of water and then the concentrated color is just going to flow into it, and we are not going to have this gradual ombre effect. which is what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm just going to continue doing exactly the same. Time to time, this little puddle will need to be mixed up. Well, actually, every single time you're going to go in probably, because my cobalt teal has, like I said, lovely green to it, but also naturally cobalt blue or the cobalt turquoise will always granulate and pigment separate, so you'll get this lovely speckles in there. So if you don't want to just pick up, for example, a puddle where you have a concentration of one or the other, which could be actually a good thing, well, let's try what happens, then you just need to mix it up. It's not very visible in this particular leaf here. Also, the leaves that are laying on top of each other, what I will try to do is leave them until the top leaf has dried. So I can see actually I'm starting to run out of the teal, so I need to mix it up again, because here you can see the concentration is not as much anymore, so I'm going to add that. So it's a little bit more greener than the previous leaves, but that's fine. I'm also going to use that in the next leaf so I don't lose the pigment straight away. It is a little bit awkward for me to hold the brush like so, because naturally I wouldn't, if I'm not filming, you know, I wouldn't set things up for you to see, and I would be moving my sketchbook around, and for me to do that I would need to zoom out sorry about all the technicality, and then you wouldn't see it as close. So for me, I'm trying to get you a good view, or give you a good view, and also so you can watch what I'm doing and see it within a reasonable distance. Okay, so it's all looking really juicy and lovely, and I think while things are still a little bit damp, what I wanted to do originally is just take some of this chartreuse and just dump it in some areas like so, but obviously when it's going to have dried in certain areas it's not going to work anymore, but I'm going to just add it in a few areas like that. Let's see what happens. It can dry like a little dot, maybe here or there, and maybe that's something we could like for the next time. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. As I go, I will be adding a little bit more of one of the other colors, just to lift things up. Not going too far away from the original color scheme here. So you can see this color is starting to look quite different. So I'm going to take it somewhere else in the illustration. Maybe here as well. And then go back to that juicier green. I love this type of illustrations where you do the drawing and you can just fill up pages and pages of your sketchbook in all sorts of drawings that you inspired from having had a walk or watched some nature documentary, or, you know, I don't know, looking through some art books or botanical books, and later on going into it with color, which is what I'm doing today. Also, not all days will you feel like you want to paint or draw, sorry. I sometimes feel like I just want to use paint, just watercolor, or just pencils or mixed media, and I have to be in the mood for drawing. So here you can see the chartreuses are more evident in this color, so that has added an interesting touch. I'm going to go back to this color, and to do that I'm just going to add a bit more turquoise teal and a bit more chartreuse and a bit more gold green. There's a lovely color wheel I've done where I've basically mixed these beautiful granulating greens. There's a video which I'll try to link up for you to watch, but in effect this is what I'm using today. So the cobalt teal is super granulating and pigment separating. The gold green deep is mildly granulating, and the chartreuse is a creamy color, so there's no white in there, but it's not granulating, and also it's the most opaque out of all of them, which means that you're going to get a different kind of effect with it. But you can see it's still transparent. I can see the black line through it, so it's not like super white opaque, if that makes sense. It's just more on an opaque side compared to the other colors in the set. It's so peaceful right now. We had a bit of rain come out, and that was nice. Okay, so in here I'm just going to create a little variation and maybe actually add a little bit of this gold green for speckles. So this time maybe adding different color, because the chartreuse is not too visible in these sort of leaves here. I'll try to add it in some of the drier leaves as well, just to connect the whole thing a bit more. Okay, so I'm just going to continue with that. And in fact, if there's something you don't quite like, for instance, I'd like to break up these dots, they're a little bit too dotty. So I'm just going to use the tip of my brush just to move things around a little bit. There you go. Kind of looks more natural now. Slightly more blended, but still you can see them. And I will just carry on. So enjoy the rest of the process. Okay, I'm just going to also swatch out these kind of colors that I mixed up for the dots and things. And one more which was a little bit more greener. About there. So this is the color palette that I went with mostly. And basically I will let it dry. I already can see some lovely speckles of pigment separation coming through, and I haven't decided. I might add a little bit of pencil, or I might just leave it like it is. At the minute I feel quite happy with it, but when I look at it right now, I think on the paper it looks good. Just maybe a little bit of detail here and there. That could be glazing, so just adding a layer of deeper mix of watercolor just at the base of the leaf, or I could use pencils to do that with. So like I said, I haven't decided yet, and it's one of those things that I might give myself a little like break, maybe like 5 minutes or a day, and then come back and decide what to do with it later. So for now I will leave it, and if I decide to do something with it, I will share that with you. But let me know what you think, whether you would leave it as it is or would you add some light detail, because for me right now it has this light value and medium value. There is no deep value. So with every illustration to stand out, you want 3 levels of value, kind of the light, the medium and the dark, and that's what usually finishes off an illustration nicely. Just to give you an example from a previous tutorial where I played with contrast, and adding this deepest value just immediately changed the whole thing and made it look more finished and just pop off the page. So I might do it here, I may not do it here, we will see. Okay, so I'm back. It's been about 5 minutes probably, so not so long, and I think what I'm gonna do is I look through my Tombow markers. These are water soluble, and I said many times in my previous videos that I love using these markers in place of watercolor. So the entire page here has been done with these markers, and they're super fun. On one end they're fine, so if you wanted to add a bit of detailing, or you can use this brush. So what I'm gonna do, and I did a little test run here where it really looks like watercolor. So I'll show you on the bottom few leaves. Basically, you need to wait for the watercolor to dry, and then you're going to add a little bit of it at the bottom, and you can wait a little bit. I mean, they don't set or become permanent the longer you wait, but I advise to do it soon after. I find that I can blend the ends better, and kind of it looks more like watercolor that way. So just wiggling my brush around, just working through those bits, and can you see now how suddenly it has brought a little bit of contrast? Now if I really wanted to, I could also add into wet a few of these kind of marks, also into dry as well, but I find that on the wet they spread out immediately. I mean, you can do that as well with a bit of watercolor, but it becomes, or a bit of water on your brush, it's more difficult, I find, than just adding a little bit of it into the wet. So let me show you a close-up of how the leaf ends up looking. And obviously the paper needs to dry, but I feel that there is more texture and a little bit more contrast within that. So without overdoing things, but just adding a little bit of something. You could also change up colors if you wanted to go for like a different color, but I don't have any juicy dark greens like vibrancy wise in my Tombos, so it's hard to pick online colors, and there weren't that many available at Cassart last time I went, and I really like this kind of speckle effect on top of the other speckles we already have. So I wouldn't do too many of them, but just a few here and there, and just with a wet brush I would add a bit more water to have it less kind of obvious as a dot. And yeah, so that is how I'm going to add a deeper value to my illustration. So what I decided to do is just do this contrasting effect on one side and see which one looks better to me. So sometimes it's easier, rather than just doing a couple of leaves, you almost can close up one side and evaluate what you prefer. And I think for me this side has more kind of detail without being overworked, and I really like the little speckles here. So in case you're interested, this was the 228, and it's called, I have all the names written out because Tombow doesn't share the names on their markers. So it's called Grey Greens, is this color right here. So I'll give you a nice little close-up. Let me know which one do you prefer. As I'm looking at this, I'm very much tempted to go back and just add a tiny little bit of this same green, grey or grey green, right at the tips, and make it look like the leaf is curling. So we've got that kind of highlight on this side and a curving effect. And I think that would create even a little bit more dimension, but I don't know. Shall I or shall I not? I think I'll leave it like that for now. I think I'm happy enough, but it's always something you can, in retrospect, go back to. You could even, you know, if you wanted to add even more depth at this point, I would then take, I've got actually some lovely dark green watercolor pencils, or just go with pencils. Just normal dry, I call them dry, but they're just colored pencils, and add that little bit more of detail if you wanted to. But the key is to still maintain that freshness of modern botanical art without overdoing it. I think the simpler when it comes to modern botanical art, the better, but I do want to have a little bit of detail and depth. I couldn't leave alone this illustration, and I just thought, why don't I use a different color? And I absolutely love the effect. So it looks like slightly dry ends of the leaves, and it just looks so gorgeous. I am going to show you quickly what I did. So I used the 026 and literally just added the tiniest amount into the corner. The key is a very little amount, and then just a tiny little bit of water, blending it out, and again dipping it with the end, and that is it. It is so pretty. All right, that really is truly is it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.